Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Margaret Ramos, and the assigned topic to me is the selection and use of instructional materials. So here, I will share my screen. Okay, so this is my topic. Okay. Okay, so selection and the use of instructional materials. So we have some quotes under it. We learn by example and by direct experience because there are limits to the adequacy of verbal instruction. So that is from Malcolm Gladwell. Okay, so first, before we go to the topic, let's now first define what is instructional material. Okay, so what are instructional materials? Okay, so it is a recommendation of school personnel and students from all relevant department and grade levels. Okay, the reputation and significance of the material's author, producer, and publisher, and also the price of the material weigh against its value and or the need for it. So on that, we'll go to the next slide. It's the definition and some, okay, next slide. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is the next slide. Okay, so instructional materials are things or devices that assist the facilitator in the teaching learning process. Okay, so devices, when we say devices, these are things that we use or teachers or educators use in the teaching learning process for them to make the teaching very engaging. Okay, so they are not self-supporting. They are supplementary training devices. Okay, so instructional materials also are the tools used in the educational lessons. Okay, and any resource teacher uses to help him teach his students. It is the appropriately relate. Okay, it must be related on the learning objectives of the teacher. And last, it includes materials used to facilitate learning for better results. So we use instructional material for the betterment of the teaching process. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. We have different types of instructional material. So we have the vision, and also the visual aids. So when you say visual, we uses the sight. Okay, for example, some print ads, textbooks, things like that. And secondly is the audiovisual. Okay, so audiovisual is the combination of the sound and the vision. Okay, audiovisual. Next is the print. It includes the textbooks, pamphlets, handouts, study guides, and manuals. Okay, audio. for itself only, cassette, microphone, and podcasts. So we also have the electronic material, electronic interactive, like the computer, graphing calculators, and also tablets that we use to the teaching learning process. Okay, so next slide, we had some examples, some pictures. Okay, here is a workbook, a textbook, and a graphic organizer. So we uses that to make some diagram. Okay, so that is some examples of the instructional materials. Okay, next is the kinds of instructional materials. Okay, so we have the fixed instructional materials. These are printed textbooks. The content and the material are indivisible and cannot be altered. It means it cannot be changed. So it is fixed. So all details, including information inside the book, textbook, or printed ads, are cannot be altered. So it cannot be changed. Next is the flexible instructional materials. These are the content to be separated from the representation of the content. Allow content to be separated from the presentation of the content. Oh, flexible. It means the content of the material can be separated to the presentation of the content. Okay. So now let's go to next slide. It's about factors. The factors guiding the selection of instructional materials. So there are factors we need to consider to use how to use instructional materials. Okay, the first factor is it should be the availability of the materials. Okay, so teachers should ensure that the instructional materials to be used are easily available for us for use before and the date of use. So it should be availability. No, I mean it should be available, and we need to consider the availability of the material being used. Okay, next is the accessibility. It is the duty of the teacher to ensure that materials to be used as instructional materials are not only available, but also accessible. So it should be accessible to the teacher and also to the educator who is using the material. Okay, next is the affordability. Of course, we need to consider the affordability, the cost of the instructional material being used. So it should not be expensive enough, should be such that either the teacher or the school can afford. Yes, so we don't need too much expensive or too very expensive of the instructional material. So it should be affordable. Okay. Next is, okay, so next slide is it should be suitability. Suitability, it means it should be suitable, ensure the appropriateness of the materials for his intended learners. Okay, so suitability. It means it should be suitable to the age of the learner. Okay, suitable to the age of the learner. Okay, so you need to consider what is the age of your learners to find appropriate appropriate instructional materials. Okay, next is the simplicity. We also need instructional materials that are simple to operate and to manipulate. Okay, so it should not be very complicated and just simple enough to understand by the learners. And next, qualitative. It means that materials selected for teaching should be of a good quality. So it should be quality. And last is the recency. The instructional material should be the best or to be, it should not be out of date. Okay, so instructional materials should be the best or nearest to the best, and it should be not be out of date. So recent, it means updated, updated details, updated information about what would you like to discuss to the learner. So it should be very clear and recent information. All right, so now let's go to the guidelines or principles, the guiding principles in selection and use of the IMs or the instructional materials. Okay, right here you can see that all instructional materials are aid of instructions. They do not replace the teacher. Okay, so even if you have that good instructional material, it can't replace the teacher. Okay, next is choose the instructional material that best suits your instructional objective. Okay, so you need to see, you need to know your objective first to choose what kind of instructional material you are using. And if possible, use variety of tools. You need also to check out the instructional material before class starts to be sure that it is working. So before to start a class, you need to check if all your materials are in good condition or they are okay. So now that um, they are working. Okay, so and the first thing to do is to check all your instructional materials. Okay, before class. Okay, so this on the next slide. This our general utilization guide on the use of media, which includes, okay, the first one is, first, we need to learn how to use the instructional materials, of course. So how can you use it even you or even the educator or the teacher doesn't know how to use the instructional material. Okay, so learn first how to operate. Okay, letter B, you need to prepare introductory remarks, questions, or initial comments you may need. Okay, before you start your lesson, you need to make some introductory remarks or some welcome questions so that your learners have the idea what is your topics all about. Okay, letter C, you need to provide conducive environment. Okay, so in order for the learner and the teacher to have a very good teaching learning process, they need to have a conducive environment to focus on the given topic. Okay, letter D, explain the objective of the lesson. Okay, so don't forget to pinpoint or to focus on the objective of the lesson. Letter E, stress what to be watched or listened to carefully. Okay, so you can tell your student or your learners that take notes of the important things because you may give a quiz after watching a movie, or just listen very carefully on the lesson, what the instructional material would like to imply, so that your learners would focus more on the movie or the video you are watching or to your report. Okay, so that is letter E. Now let's go with letter F. It states what they are expected to do with the information they will learn. State what they are expected to do with the information they will learn. Okay, so for letter F, we need to tell the students what would they get from the lesson or to the topic you are discussing. So state to your learner, what will they get from the the lesson, or what would they what information they can get from your lesson for this day or for today. Okay, last, we need to prepare or measure that can assess students' experiences on the use of the material based on the objectives. Okay, we need to prepare measure that can assess students' experience on the use of the material based on the objectives. Okay, so for the last one, we need to prepare. Okay, for example, a quiz after you have discussed, you have report something. You need to prepare a question, quiz, short quiz, just to assess the students' learning if they have, if they get the the lesson properly, or they did not listen, pay attention, just to know if your learners really watch or really understand the given topic based on the instructional material that you have used. Okay, so now that is the guidelines, guiding principles in selection the use of material. So now let's review again what are the guidelines. Okay, the first, we need to learn how to use the instructional material. Second, we need to prepare. Third, we need to provide a very conducive environment. Okay, fourth, explain what is your objective of the lesson. Next, point out or stress what to be watched or listened to or pay attention carefully. Next, state what they are expected to do. Okay, and next, prepare a short quiz or assessment exam or assessment questions, just to know your students' um, your students learning after they have watched or they have listened to your lesson. Okay, now let's go to the selection and the use of the IMs. Okay, we have selection of textbooks. So which textbook would you like to use for the students and what type of textbook? Last, selection of supplementary materials. So, okay, supplementary materials are the supporting IMs. Okay. We have various form of media. The first is the audio recordings, overhead transparency or overhead projector, bulletin board, chalkboard, of course, chalkboard. Charts, we also use charts. Mac, realia, or the real thing, videotape or films, models, pictures, books, and also the electronic materials. So these are some forms of the media we are using. Okay, so I guess that is the end of my report. This has my references, so if you can check all the details on my report is included in this reference. Okay, so I hope you have learned something about instructional material and how or when we are need we how and when we need to use those instructional material. Okay, so thank you very much for attend for listening into my report and thank you. Good night. Okay, where is that? Hmm.